Hello and welcome to the Absolute Beginner Guitar Lesson Series. My name is Oliver and today's lesson is lesson number 2. The subject of today's lesson is intervals in music. So what is an interval in music? I think the best way I could state this is to say that if I were to play a note on a guitar and then play a different note on the same guitar, there would be a difference in pitch between the two notes. One of the notes would be higher in pitch than the other, and the other would be lower in pitch. So the difference in pitch between two notes is known as an interval. If we're going to talk about intervals, I think what we want to do is we want to boil them down to their basic fundamental level. In the Western system of music, the smallest interval is what's known as a half step. If I were to play a note on the guitar, let's say I played the note on the 5th fret of the low E string, the note right next to it on the same string would be 1/2 step away. So what I'm saying is, if I were to play the note at the 5th fret on the E string, the note on the 6th fret of the E string would be 1/2 step higher. And also, the note on the 4th fret of the E string would be 1/2 step lower than the original note. And this sort of lays out how the guitar is set up interval-wise. The guitar is broken down into frets, and from one fret to the next fret is a half step intervals. If I were to play a note at the 5th fret on the low E string, and then let's say I were to play another note at the 7th fret on that same string, there would be a difference of 2 frets between the first note and the second note. And as I said, a difference of 1 fret along the same string on a guitar is a half step interval. So therefore, if we go 2 frets, that's 2 half step intervals. And that would be known as a whole step. So that's the second level of understanding, is to see that half step intervals can be combined to create whole step intervals. And also that half step and whole step intervals can be combined to create larger intervals. I want to draw your attention to what I have written here on the whiteboard. As you can see, I have the musical alphabet starting on the letter A and proceeding through to the next letter A. And the first thing I'd like to do is I would like to introduce the concept of an octave. And what I'll say is, if you look at this A at the beginning of the line, and then you look at this other A at the other end of the line, our eyes can tell us that that note is A. But our knowledge of music theory also tells us that this A is higher in pitch than this A. And that difference in pitch between this A and this one here is what's known as an octave. So I'm just going to draw just a little funky line connecting these two notes. And I'm going to sort of indicate that that's an octave. The A at this end of the line can be seen as being an octave lower in pitch than this A at the other end. And conversely, if I start at the other end, this A is an octave higher in pitch than this A. I would like to analyze the intervals between the notes of the musical alphabet. When I say that, I mean I would like to analyze the difference, the interval between the A and the B, and the B and the C and the D, and so on. So what we're going to do is we're going to analyze the interval between a note of the musical alphabet and the note that immediately follows it in the musical alphabet. So at this point, I would like to provide you with some additional information. So please write what I have here, and I'm going to provide some additional information. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is that the interval between the notes A and B, and I'm just going to draw this little V here to indicate that's the interval between the notes A and B, is what's known as a whole step. And I'm just going to indicate that with a W. And the first thing that I've noticed is that there are a whole lot more W's than H's. So there appears to be more whole steps here than half steps. And I think more importantly, what I can see is that the interval between the notes B and C is a half step. And I can also see that the interval between the notes E and F is also a half step. And everything else is whole steps. So by observing these two exceptions, I guess what I'll call them, between the notes B and C and E and F, where the interval is a half step, all the other intervals are whole steps. So if we can just remember this stuff, it'll be easy for us to recall the rest of the information. And the importance of this information is that this is how we're going to find notes on the guitar. So let me just provide an example of that. If I were to play the note A on the guitar and I needed to play the note B after it, I needed to find that note. What my knowledge of music theory tells me is that the interval between the first note A and the next note B is a whole step. And also I understand that a whole step on a guitar is a difference of 2 frets along the same string. So that allows me to be able to find the B note 2 frets above wherever the A note was along the same string. If we want to find notes on a guitar, this is going to be the key, is knowing the intervals between the various notes. But that's it. Put in your time, put in your work, and I hope to see you back here for lesson 3, because we're really going to pick it up and take it up a few notches. Peace.